Who is the rudest celebrity you have met? Former NYC stagehand. Worked with a lot of celebrities. Madonna was the worst. Treated stagehands like garbage. Told her assistants to tell us not to make eye contact or say hi to her if we saw her. Anybody caught on their phones near her was subject to being kicked off the show. This was also 2010ish, when she wasn't relevant for at least 15 years. What a post-Madonna. Katy Perry demanded a massage at 3 AM in the hotel I worked at. When we were unable to provide a massage, she filed a complaint against us and kept swearing at the staff. LOL Katy, this is a Motel 6. We don't do massages here. Nobody is going to know who this is, but Tridge Joester House is ugly on the inside. I was helping out at a Sunday morning gig and she treated stagehands like they weren't even people. Told her staff to tell the stagehands they were not to touch her mic. Told her staff loudly that the sound guy in this place was always shit, with the sound right there. And when two little girls came to her dressing room door after the show, she made them wait forever, and then after they left, she dropped the drawings they'd given her in the trash, laughing, while the girls were still within earshot. Just an all-round nasty human being. This was actually so sad, but Bill Nye was kind of a jerk sad face. He came to my school for a lab opening, and I was one of the students chosen to walk with him to show some project that was done in his honor. He didn't really talk to the students, which was weird considering he was like a hero to many of us, and then he insulted the project. He pointed out something that could have been better, and then he made a suggestion for next time to one of the kids who made the project. I felt so bad for him, the kid. He just awkwardly tried to explain what he did and then they kept walking. The whole time, Bill really seemed like he didn't want to be there. I was disappointed, but I guess I still like him a lot. Anna Paquin. Met her in Woods Hole when she was traveling over to the vineyard. This was like the summer after the original X-Men movie was released. She was the biggest bitch I have ever met. She treated the locals with such disdain that she is still a freaking joke there decades later. No tips for any bartenders or waitresses. Tried to refuse to pay for parking. Yelled at everyone. Horrible excuse for a human being. Bill Cosby. My dad worked as a stage designer for IBM back in the 70s. Got me a front row seat to see Fat Albert and an after show meet and greet. After his show he was sitting on a stool with a glass of wine, I think, smoking a cigar, and I was an 80-year-old red-headed white kid in a smallish crowd of black kids. Might have been 6 of us in total. Bill took time and patience to greet every black kid there was as I hung in the back waiting my turn. He gets to me and said in a huff, "I ain't got time for you kids," stomped out his cigar and walked off. I wasn't too distressed, but my dad, who witnessed this with the other parents, wanted to punch him in the face. I cooled him off and said it was fine, but I never had the warm fuzzies towards Fat Albert I had prior to this scene. I grew up and everyone loved Cosby. When asked, I just flatly said I didn't like him. I'd get looks like there was something wrong with me. "He's just not funny" would be my standard answer, instead of stating this elaborate reason. But yeah, I hated Cosby before hating Cosby was cool. I was working at Heathrow when a colleague and I were doing the rounds in a buggy. This security manager asked us if we could take this person to the gate as she was held too long and is acting up, and we thought it would be fun. Sharon Osbourne got in, and while she wasn't rude to us, she was on the phone saying they freaking stopped me at security. Don't they freaking know who I am? My colleague and I were looking at each other trying to hold it in. When she put the phone down, I asked her, "How are you today, madam?" She casually responded that she is fine and asked us how we are. I've met a couple of famous guitar players. Paul Gilbert, on one hand, is a total bro. Took pictures with me and signed my t-shirt. On the other hand, I went to a concert with Yngwie Malmsteen. VIP passes. Steve Vai was the headliner again, awesome and friendly guy. But Yngwie couldn't be bothered to talk to any VIP members. He just kinda sat around and didn't do anything. William Shatner. Honestly, I love his work, but at a convention he charged a lot just for a picture and would just dismiss people once the transaction was over. On an opposite note, Sam Jones, Flash Gordon, was there, and he talked to me for maybe 10-15 minutes about myself and whether I played football or not. Best interaction I could hope for. Kenny Rogers. I worked at Disneyland a couple decades ago as a cashier in the shops. The rules pertinent to this story are 1. Do not acknowledge celebrities as such so they can just be normal for a day, and 2. Guests using unsigned credit cards must show it. Broken rules equals I get fired. So Kenny Rogers and his wife come up to me with an armload of baby clothes for their grandkids or whatever, and Kenny Rogers hands me a visa that says Kenny Rogers on it. I ask for his ID, to protect against fraud, etc. And he throws down with, "Don't you know who I am?" Which is something I didn't think real people actually said. But he did, and made me feel like an idiot. But I pressed on in defense of my $6.50 HR job, and that's how I found myself looking at Kenny Rogers, Kenny Rogers' visa, and Kenny Rogers' California driver's license, also containing Kenny Rogers' name and picture of Kenny Rogers. If I hadn't known who Kenny Rogers was before, it would have been a thorough lesson. Ellen is really mean. Lot of arsehole celebrities out there, but manner-wise, Jeffrey Tambor. Frick him. Susan Sarandon. I worked at a restaurant in Vancouver that catered to celebrities, has private VIP dining areas, etc. Susan came in for dinner one night, complained about everything. The leaves in her salad were too big for one. Sent back, was insulting to the wait staff, and told everyone they are not allowed to speak to her. Had her assistant order for her to avoid taking to anyone. Was incredibly rude. I worked there for a few years and met and interacted with dozens of celebrities. She was the far the worst. On a side note, Gary Sinise was the nicest celebrity I ever met. Fantastic guy who interrupted his lunch. He refused to sit in the private dining room, sat out on the balcony with everyone else, to sign autographs and take pictures with other dinners, told stories and seemed genuinely happy to have so many fans around. Left the wait staff a huge tip. So here's another perspective on Susan Sarandon. I worked as an AD on a movie in 2003 and my wife brought my newborn son to set for lunch a couple of days a week. Susan took interest one day and sat with us for a bit chatting about having kids and some of her experiences raising children. I welcomed her to set the following Monday after a long weekend and she said, "I have something for you. I'll bring it to set after blocking." When she returned later, she had a baby gift for my son. She explained that both of her kids had really liked this particular toy as toddlers. My wife, son and I got a photo with her and the gift at lunch that day. I thought that was a very thoughtful thing for her to do as a random crew member. I also accompanied her into a few local shops during her lunch so she could buy some souvenirs for her kids and meet some local business owners. Though she was one of the nicest people I worked with while I was in film. Different strokes, I guess. Remember, take everything in this thread with a huge grain of salt. Celebrities' behavior interpreted as being rude could be them just trying to set boundaries with intrusive fans. Tom Hanks. He's the only celebrity I've met. So even though he was an absolute delight, he's technically the rudest celebrity I've ever met. Theodosynthephus Thalf JPG. Jay Leno. Met him before he got the Tonight Show. He was an egotistical jerk. Made such a negative impression. I can't watch him in anything and not remember the awful person he is. I stopped watching NBC almost entirely based on their decision to have him host the Tonight Show. I bartender. Served in NYC until recently and have met a bunch of celebs. Rachel Ray is notoriously horrible to everyone. The Edge brought his bodyguard to take up a whole $4 by himself while he sat separately and tipped less than 15% of his bill. Paul McCartney's wife came in and complained about the cake cutting fee. Got it waived. Their cake appeared to have come from a shop right. Bill was over $400. $70 tip on an 8 top, which if you are married to a billionaire and yourself and heir of sorts, come on. BJ Novak got super bitchy because as I announced the kind of whiskey I said the brand, but not the specific make, and he irately questioned me repeatedly on it being the correct kind. Carly Gugino and John Tish cut me off in the middle of reciting a special, started mocking me and then pretended I wasn't there. However, their friend that took care of the bill tipped over 30% on a $1,200 check. Dinner for 5 people. This was a normal occurrence. Adam Driver is a good dude. Woody Allen is as quiet and neurotic as you would think. Jake Gyllenhaal is so nice and down to earth. Seriously the best. James Franco is very nice and very quiet. I've said this before on my other account, but Courtney Cox is the biggest bitch in Hollywood. And, don't get me started with Oprah. Please get started on Oprah. Hands down Will Wheaton. It's not even close. Dude gets super pissy if he's not the center of attention. He was rude and condescending to my girlfriend who wasn't really interested in him. He even literally did the "do you know who I am" and was being a complete shit stick asshole. Dude has some severe problems and requires validation at all times, I guess. I once watched Ryan Gosling try and take like 10 candy bars from a supermarket without paying. Dave Grohl. Saw him in a bar. My mate was besotted with him, a die-hard fan. He worked up the courage to ask for his autograph while the Foo Fighters frontman was leaving. Dave wrote a message, folded the paper and gave it back to him and bid his goodbyes. When my mate opened the piece of paper, it said, "The only reason why I joined a band is so I wouldn't end up being a loser like you." He was heartbroken. Not me, but my dad. He worked as a busboy, but one day was called out of his job to his manager's office. My family is from Kentucky and apparently Colonel Sanders, the founder of KFC, was outside. A black boy brought the Colonel's food out and apparently he freaked, disgusted to have a black boy touch his food. My dad was the only other boy, who was white, that wasn't doing something else at the moment. Colonel Sanders demanded his food be recooked and my dad bring it out. My dad refused and scolded a man many years older than him for the racism. Then, he quit.